I had clearly not spent enough time because I didn't even notice this. So it is time to get the 220 grit on Frank and Jeep, and at the same time we have all of these additional parts. I got doors, I got this whole windshield setup, I got my tailgate back there, got all kinds of additional bits and bobs that need to be sanded as well. Now the doors, I got to sand both sides of them. Everything's got to be done both sides now because that's all going a different color. So I set up myself up a little bit of additional work, but that's okay. That's okay, we got time. Next thing, in the booth, masking up, respirator on, in the booth, 220 grit, going over everything. I really hadn't been thinking about 220 grit, but the more I'd read, the more I thought, you know what, if I stop at 120, it's just going to be a lot of work for that primer to fill in those gaps. They're small to us, but apparently, as the science goes, I need to get down to at least 180. I'm going with 220 because I happen to have a lot of 220 sitting around, and that's the reason why. Anyway, so one last pull on the dart. One hit of the Joe. Let's tool up. It's gonna get awfully dusty awfully fast, and I don't want the GoPro in here for too long, but this guy off with the 120, on with the 220. Well, it is a red world in there. But it's done. Welcome to the West facility. A little further away from the house, so I can work on my odd hours, which I'm going to need to do because now that I've changed colors, realize how much I actually still have to sand and fill on parts other than the actual Frank and Jeep. I have, let's see, I have a windshield, I have a hood, I have a shifter plate, I have two doors plus the rear tailgate. So got a fair bit of work ahead of me now, which right now it's 2:45. In shifting things around in the West facility, I also happen to realize that I found the old rat trap. It's not good. So it was over there, and now it's over there with a big fluffy mess around it. So I gotta go clean that up. That won't make the video. Yeah, let's take on the hood. Yeah, we'll do the hood first. To finish off top, and then I gotta flip over the other side, and I'm gonna use some of these old, I've got some old 80s, just to scuff it up. It doesn't need to be as pretty, obviously, but I just need to scuff it up so that the primer will take. this tailgate is in some pretty rough shape. I think this guy got smashed pretty good. But this little fella cannot be done with the orbital. There's just no surface that's flat enough, big enough. So it's all hand sanding in here. I'm going to scuff it with 80. Then I'm going to go over it again with 120 and then 220. So this one will take a little while. All the sanding's done. All the filling's done. Wiped it all down by hand. Dried it all off by hand. All that's left now is to mask off some areas. I'm going to remask the engine bay because we had to take that off in order to get to some additional areas. And then we're ready to paint. Well, prime. So, got a couple of little pinholes here and here. I want to get those filled, so I'm going to use the glazing and spotting putty. Alright. One more little guy down here. Okay, while that dries, oh, a little spot. There we go. All right, spotting putty done. One other thing in the prepping process that I believe needs to be said, when we get old vehicles like this, down in these little corners, there's a lot of debris that sits down in here that sort of escapes the entire process. You can see that as I'm pulling that away, there's actually quite a bit there. So I'm going to go through with the pick and make sure that I get all of these seams and dig out any little bits that are in there. I know I keep saying I'm ready to prime. I know I keep finding other stuff. I just want to make sure that we get this right. Okay, so we've got all the bits back in the main facility, and got some hand sanding to do. So I've got a kind of a cool little tool for that. There's some terrible lighting here. And then I got to wipe all this stuff off because it's hasn't been wiped off yet. Certainly can't prime it until then. So this is this little secret. It's just a sponge, and it's got a Velcro on the front. And then there's various different grits of sandpaper. So it's going to allow me to kind of get into these little corners that nothing I could get to before. Okay, the 120 is now all done. on the front side of the hood, of the windshield. Now I'm going to go to a 220. So where I find this guy's really great is in these corners. You see how it flexes as it turns the corner. So I can get right in there. You know what? I'm actually okay with that. $20.09. Little portable paint booth. It's going to be wide enough that I can get the widest pieces in. And captures 90% of the overspray. Then we win. And it'll even function as a little tent area in the fall, right? Little Velcro closures here so you can close it up. I'm not sure what the point of that is. I'm not sure how you can paint where it's closed, but whatever. Time to plug in the old compressor and get the respirator on and actually get to business spraying. What are we using here? We're using Duplicolor primer, and we're going to mix it 2 parts to 1 part thinner. This paint gun, I'm going to try and set that between 25 and 30 pounds. This is a paint gun I've never used before, which means it's the same as every other paint gun on the planet because I've never done this before. My understanding is this is your airflow, so you push this all the way in and you dial this forward. That gives you full open. Then when you let go, now you can dial it a little bit more to control your airflow. This is our paint flow and wider spread and narrower spread. That's my understanding of how this works. Is it flammable? And a half a cup of thinner. Not a safety video. Time to get her going. I'm going to fill the canister about halfway because I don't know that I'm going to get all the way through it tonight. Let's give it a good mix first. A little different. Okay, I'm going to tighten it up a little bit for the front window. We'll widen her back out when we hit the Franken Jeep. Mr. Hood is in the spray booth. The Power Fist. The Power Fist 2009. Without getting into too many of the gory details, I got that second coat of primer on, and as you can see, it is actually gray. I hadn't mixed it enough. It's part of being a Williams. So the other thing is, wound up going through all of the primer. My doors aren't done. So I'm going to get this one sanded down. I got to pick up some more primer, and on island that means spray cans. So spray can primer the rest of the way because I ain't waiting. Anyway, let's get sanding this guy. So I'm using 600 grit. Fold that in 3 like always.
Follow the curve.
From the get-go, I probably should have used this guy as my canary in the coal mine. Probably should have done all my sanding on this first, then my priming, make sure everything works. But I didn't. No. So as a result, I'm going to get to redo some shit. So now I'm going to sand it, and then I'm going to spray prime it to get it caught up. This is the grill that goes over the engine, over the vent on the hood. This is what apparently cools the engine on a 1987 Jeep Wrangler. There's actually more little small parts like this than I remember. Headlight bezels, those have to be done. Hood hinges, those have to be done. Harder to sand than you might think, and musical. So red. So red. It's 3 a.m. So there's no primer being bought for about another 6 hours. What better to do? What better to do than to get the flexible sander and work in the booth on Franken Jeep. The fan. Out with the bad air. In with the good air. It's a Peter Sellers thing. Something that the primer did that I wasn't really expecting it to do, it's done a really good job of showing me some spots where I need to do some more filling. Now these spots I knew about, but what I didn't know about was this spot and this spot. So I've got these two little spots here that I need to fill that I didn't even know about. Who knew? Well, I guess anyone that's done this before knows. Anyway, now I know. Paid a little extra for the Duplicolor Automotive Primer Series Filler. Fills deep scratches and sands easily. I'm going to give this thing a try on these little spots. Over here I got another one I got a couple on the back of the Jeep. So I'm going to give this stuff a try, see how it does. Done. Shake vigorously for 1 minute. Moment of truth. Here's our guy. Well, we'll see how those do. Let's talk about paint costs. One of the things that I haven't done in a little while is updated on costs. So paint costs, the primer from Canadian Tire was 60 bucks. The filler primer was another 20 bucks. The clear coat was another $60. That's 140. And the direct metal paint that I'm gonna go with is $75. So that's $215 for the paint. And we'll do the $25 thing for the sandpaper and the poly. So $225 plus another $25 for miscellaneous materials, blades, that sort of thing, the sandpaper. So that puts us at $240. Throw a little sanding on here. When we're on the island and you run out of primer, it's down to the co-op for some Rust-Oleum. So the tailgate and the doors are going to be done in a slightly different gray. What is this? This is the front end off the John Deere LR 180. I had a little run-in with a sea can last summer. So while we've got some material on the go, and my ADHD is in high gear, I figured let's get the JB Weld, and we got a little one of those little mesh panels on the back. JB Weld sat overnight. I'm gonna get the Bondo out. Chances are it's going to be a John Deere afterwards. Who knows? We'll see what we can do with it though. There is a story behind it. When I saw in PG, I decided that was what I needed to put on the El Jepo. So I try to find that color and I go to paint store after paint store in Prince George, couldn't find it. I finally downloaded an app made by Behr, B-E-H-R, paint. And what it is you pull up a photo and you press a spot on the photo and it tells you what Behr color paint matches it. So that is the photo that I used, and it came up with a color called Palisade. French side there, but I'm using the Behr semi-gloss direct to metal paint, corrosion and rust resistant. Not exactly car paint, not exactly a car paint town. Fortunately, the Jeep doesn't have a lot of curved panels, so straight sanding I'm able to do a lot of this, and I understand that that makes me a little bit on the lucky side, because when I get to a spot that isn't straight, I have quite a few challenges. Now that I'm getting to the spot where I'm about to paint, I'm really starting to kind of push because I want to see the color on the car. And that's a bit of a mistake, obviously, because I got to look over everything again and check for drips exactly like this, because it's going to look terrible. And I'm not going to be able to do anything about it at that point. I'm going to go through and spend more time sanding, which I'm not going to bore you with, but I am going to spend more time sanding before we get to paint. Got some Bondo, because when I went through and did some more sanding, I found some pinholes that needed to get filled, but I've got some Bondo left over. So might as well start filling the John Deere. So after going through and spending some time really looking closely, the hood was also a mess. It is going to need another coat of primer, and I'm going to get on that now. Before I do spray that primer on the whole thing, I'm going to give the filler, Duplicolor filler, another shot. Means I need a flathead screwdriver. So I'm going to get a close-up photo of what it looks like before. All of that is what I caught just in one spot on going back through. I clearly went way too fast. So this is going to get resanded and primed. I did a sand to take the high. Side quest alert. From 320, work on this. Time for a second coat. Fill in these other spots here. Again, it's not a showpiece. Ooh, that's got a lot of hardener. That's going to harden fast. Harden fast. Coat number 2, sanding. You'll notice there's a couple little areas that need some fast work. What I had done is I had primed right over top of the original red that was on here. So in order to get rid of that, I'm going to go very quickly. I'm going to go 80 to 320 to 600 and then pick all the crap out of the middle. John Deere. Better than it was. So I went around, did one last tap test on everything. The Jeep looks great. It's ready to paint, no problems whatsoever. So maybe I'll learn eventually, right? Well, I uncovered this little fella. Thought I'd take a little bit of a look along here. This seems to be the worst spot. And I found some other areas. Again, stopping and looking over what you've done when you think you're finished is obviously the way to go. For me, anyway. I'm gonna go and look over at the other side now and see what I've missed. Okay, we'll give this a little love. Finding all kinds of little spots that I need to fill. Surely there's nothing wrong with this spot. I found myself a smaller sanding block, and I'm going to do a little 180 now on this additional Bondo repair that I had to do. Plus I've got a bunch of filler around in different corners that I'm going to take on. I'm going to do 180, then I'm going to switch to the 320. Hey, I want to armor coat the underside of these, but in order to do it, I got to scrub them out. You got to scrub them out and then have it drip all over the place and then dry it overnight. Commence scrubbing. So tomorrow, mask it up, spray it out with the armor coating, and we're one step closer. Well, that'll wrap up chapter 9. We got it all primed. We did a little bit more spotting than spot filling than we anticipated. So we're going to break painting into 2 chapters. One we've just finished. The next one, we're going to get some color on this bad boy. Our new costs will come across here. Our carrying costs are here, which brings us to our new total here. There's where our costs are now. We're getting awfully close to $3,000. Anyway, thanks for watching. Look forward to getting some color on this bad boy in chapter 10. See you next time.